So I know I just kind of went off a lot on some of this, but I want our audience to understand that if you are expecting your child to overcome this without your help, you're going to be pretty upset because it's not going to happen. Not to the level that we know and as quick as it can be with your involvement in a positive way. So hoping our listeners who are working with different clinicians are really working with them on their parenting, how to adapt it, how to troubleshoot, you know, what's going well, what's not going well. How can we parent your child in this moment and support them?
Yeah. And you mentioned that when parents are facilitating and doing all these things, it lowers a child's anxiety. But when we think about parenting, lowering your child's anxiety also lowers your own anxiety as a parent. So I think there's almost that, you know, effect of, you know, you're obviously trying to help your child, but I know that a lot of times parents feel that helplessness of, you know, I don't know how to navigate. What if I, you know, what if I make this move and then it goes a little bit, you know, off track or something like that. But the more that we're showing your child, the more that we're kind of allowing your child to feel in control and lower that anxiety, it actually will positively impact you as well as a parent.
It's interesting that you say that. What happens when we're really anxious or nervous? We get a very flat affect. And what we see when families first come here or they show up to Communicamp day one, I always say day one is tough. It's like you could hear a pin drop and, you know, 100 people could be sitting in the audience, but you hear a pin drop because parents are coming in very nervous. They're like, you know, we've traveled far to get here. And you see that flat affect that projects onto their child.
Totally.
Their own fears, their worries, you know, and we're going to get into fake it till you make it because that's one of my favorite statements.
Yeah.
But when parents are guided on how to parent their child, how to understand why their child is acting a certain way or what their needs are in a certain situation, it helps them feel better. Their anxiety is lowered. They feel confident in the process. And we see that over the course of Communicamp for 3 days. You literally see these families just almost like they come in really nervous and tight and kind of sitting up upright. Many of them, not all of them. But then you see that kind of loose noodle approach of like they're relaxed, they're smiling, they're talking to the people next to them. We do a lot of things called Communicomfort in the program, but to help them feel comfortable. But you see that evolution in their face when they're leaving camp and they're feeling more positive each day, that projects onto their child.
Right. I will say too, you know, I think that Communicamp's a great way to think about it because when parents come in a little bit more rigid or a little bit more hesitant in the beginning and they're quiet, they're looking for that connection with us as the providers. They're looking for us to, you know, let them build that trust and let them kind of like allow themselves to trust the process. And it's almost like what we call in the psychology world of like this parallel process of like the therapist is kind of giving you more of that comfort so that you open up the trust with them. And that's the same thing that the parent will then do with their child. So I think it really does start with, you know, as parents, if you think about even being with a provider, yeah, it takes time. And that's the same way that your kids might need some time. They're kind of testing the water sometimes with you. So allowing you to kind of change your affect, like you're saying, not being as flat affected will allow their child to feel, you know, like they can let them in.
Yeah, no, for sure. As we talk about this authoritative parenting, I want to say to our listeners, please be as positive as you can. So often when we talk with parents, and it does have an effect on parenting style too, where the different parenting styles talk to their, you know, the parents talk to their children in a certain way. I find authoritarian, kind of my way or the highway, are the more disciplinarians. Obviously, they tend to be the one that's a very you should, you need to affect. And it really does cause the child to feel smaller and not as important and that they're not successful. And that projects to higher anxiety and that kind of fearful look too. And the permissive parent, you know, maybe like whatever. And I think what I'm trying to say is that I want our parents to be positive and upbeat. And I want them to, and we do this at camp too, where we say, please say 3 positive things to your child in a day. And I'm bringing that up because we're so fixated on treatment. I want my child to be talk. But forgetting who that child is and all that they're trying to do. And as you work and navigate through this process, you want to support your child in a positive way with what you say to them, not just how you look at them, not just kind of, but your affect, your, you know, smile, but say 3 positive things to them in a day. Watch how they start to open up to you and not feel so judged.
Definitely.
Any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I definitely think that a lot of times lack of communication is one of the biggest things that we find just in general when working with individuals. So I think, when thinking about helping your child or just honestly developing even like a healthier relationship with your child, having that communication, allowing you to, just kind of like empathize with your child and allow them to understand that you're next to them. You're not talking to them, you're talking with them. You're wanting to understand where they're coming from.
So we're basically going down how to become a more authoritative parenting. And let's just start with that empathy piece, because that's exactly right. Really letting them know, like, wow, I'm really proud of you for trying. Instead of, why didn't you do it this way? You need to do it that way. You need to say hi to your teacher. You need to do this. Every time you say you need to and you should, you're really squashing your child. There are ways to say you need to and you should without squashing them.
Yeah.
So can you give some examples of how to talk to a child where, let's talk about greetings. Like, that's a big pet peeve for parents. They think others think their child is rude. And many of our kids, as we know, may not be at stage 3 on the social communication bridge.
Right.
Maybe some of them are even shut down. They're not even able to be nonverbal or wave. But how could you accept your child and help them participate in a positive way and praise them, even though they may not even be speaking in that situation?
Yeah. Well, I know we mentioned the word empathy. Like, I think when I think of that, I think of understanding. And so I know even for me, when I'm talking to parents, a lot of times I'll explain even my fears. Or let's say, we're talking about greetings, for example, like I might say, I know when I'm going into a situation, like let's say a big family gathering, and I haven't seen these people, like we were just at a wedding, right? If I haven't seen these people in a while or I'm meeting new people, I know I can feel really scared. And I know for me, that could take me some time to warm up and to get comfortable. And so it's totally okay if in the beginning, we're not as comfortable saying hi. But I'm wondering, because I know we're working on a lot of these things, how would it feel, as we're leaving, if I asked you a choice question like, wait a minute, we're about to leave, and I know Uncle Bobby wants to say bye to us. Do we say hi or do we say bye? And again, depending on where they are on their social communication bridge, either that child can bridge up to saying bye to Uncle Bobby. Maybe, the parent can turn and say, well, tell me, do you want to say hi or bye? And a parent could be a verbal intermediary, which is our stage 2. Or maybe a child waves by if they're feeling very overwhelmed. And that's not them regressing. It's just we're in a very new environment and we're not as comfortable. And so a parent should still praise that. Just because they might have not used their words, they're still in a new environment where they're practicing something really, really challenging.
So for young kids, that's great. And one of the things depending on the child, they may have external motivators, right? They may see the bridge and where they're at on the bridge, and they get more points. And maybe we'll do a copy back. So our knowledge of what their baseline is in that state, in that setting, is going to be helpful. So preparing in advance, for example, hey, we're going to the wedding. We're going to see people we don't know. Like you said, I love it, Jenna. Like, I get nervous going there, instead of you shouldn't be nervous or you need to do that, or not preparing at all, having that lackadaisical approach. That's not great either. But kind of going in a positive, upbeat manner, like, hey, we're going to see a lot of people. Let's see how many people we can like kind of hands up wave to. Now, when you're dealing with teens, it's different because we can't do the like, tell me, they don't tend to do it. But for some teens, just a hand up, I tell them, is like, that's a hi.
Right.
And we talk about what it feels like between 0 and 5. So we respect their feelings, like thinking about going to the wedding. So one of the things I would do with a teen in session is be like, anything coming up, and we'll talk about it. And they might go, yeah, we're going to my cousin's wedding this weekend. Okay, let's talk about that. What are some social communication opportunities? So we might go through an action plan, kind of prepare them so that structure, that consistency, and parents kind of mirroring that to them, like getting out that action plan and talking to them about it in a very kind of positive way, but understanding that they can bridge down. And some, it's copy back. Someone says hi, they say hi.
Right.
And maybe that consciousness of just hi, and you practice that just for things like greeting, just talking to them in that way. And where younger children are playing the games, the hi-bye games, the teens are doing their goals of what can they do, and kind of troubleshooting in the beginning of what could happen often. Kind of being on the lookout. It's, upbeat and positive, like, let's look out and see how many that we know. Let's see if we see Uncle Bob or Aunt Sally and kind of know what they're going to ask. So just the way we're talking to each other is how you want to talk to your child.
Exactly.
In other words, like very kind of like matter of fact, upbeat. Let's play our games. Let's do our goals depending on the age of the child, and getting ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way, rather than you need to talk without any preparation, without any visual supports, without your knowledge of how to bring them into that social communication opportunity.
Yeah.
And so your way of doing that is really important. So we talked about empathy towards your child, and showing confidence.
Mm-hmm.